Sandman Volume 7, Brief Lives, written by Neil Gaiman, art by Jill Thompson and Vince Locke. Alright, Sandman Brief Lives. This is a very fun volume. It's very plot-driven. We're focusing on Morpheus and Delirium and Orpheus and the Endless in general. So we are really moving things along here, which is great. It's also very straightforward and linear, which is nice because Sandman can be very avant-garde sometimes, so it's nice to have something that's just straight path, you know? So, in this volume, Morpheus and his sister Delirium team up, and they are looking for their brother, Destruction. They want to find him. And it's just a very fun road trip story of Morpheus and his sister. And Delirium, she is hilarious. She's so silly, she's so weird, she just says random crazy shit, and it is highly amusing. So this volume is very fun, and lots of important things come out of it. I think you will all really dig it. Let's dive into it. Volume 7, Brief Lives. Issue 41. On a Greek island, a man named Andros Rodakinakis and his son, Chris, still watch and care over Orpheus. Morpheus arranged this for his son in 1794. We see Lady Johanna Constantine's grave. She lived to the age of 99, and she was buried on this island. A grave for her was established near Orpheus's temple, and it was tended to daily by Andros and his family. It is not said explicitly, but this is perhaps the favor that Morpheus granted Johanna Constantine after she retrieved Orpheus's head in Volume 6, that she was buried here and her grave tended to. Andros goes and visits Orpheus's head. Orpheus sings for him. Orpheus has been on this island so long, he confuses Andros with Andros's grandfather and calls him by the wrong name. Orpheus, he asks to be brought into the garden on this beautiful day. We see Delirium of the Endless. She is hanging out with a homeless woman in the rainy streets of London. Delirium is sad and comments about how she misses her brother, Destruction. She decides that she needs a change in her life. She then wanders around and she finds her way to some weird club where the people are all dressed in bondage fetish outfits. Delirium starts spiraling a bit out of control. She doesn't feel well. She starts yelling, "I want my family back!" She sees a woman she thinks is her sister Death, but it is not. Eventually, Delirium yells some more, "I want my sister! I want my sister! I want my sister!" Eventually, Desire shows up, and Desire takes Delirium back to its realm. Once they arrive in Desire's realm, we see Delirium is still sick. She is vomiting butterflies. Delirium decides that she wants to find her brother, Destruction. He's been gone long enough. Destruction was always kind to her. Destruction abandoned his realm roughly 300 years ago, and he hasn't been seen since, and no one knows where to find him. Delirium asks Desire if Desire will help her find him, but Desire rejects Delirium outright. Delirium goes to Desire's gallery where she can summon her visit to the other Endless. Delirium wonders if maybe Destiny will tell her where her brother Destruction is. He will know after all. But Desire says that if Destiny wanted us to find him, I'm sure he would let us know. Desire tells Delirium to accept that the Destruction is gone. Delirium doesn't care though. She just says, "I want him back." Delirium walks through the window into Despair's realm, and we see Despair's realm is a gray, foggy space filled with rats and mirrors where she watches other people suffering. We see Despair is watching a man whose wife caught him with child porn. Well, the wife went to the police, and the man's life is pretty much over. But he still can't bring himself to commit suicide. So he just sits there alone in his living room, giving in to despair. And Despair watching this comments, "So, it's beautiful, isn't it?" Delirium asks Despair for her help in finding her brother. Despair turns her down as well, though, albeit reluctantly, as Destruction did show Despair kindness in the past. Delirium leaves Despair's realm. She is going to try Morpheus next. Issue 42. Morpheus is in his dream realm, and he is all mopey. His most recent girlfriend broke up with him and left the castle and the dream world altogether. She decided that she no longer loved him. Now, Neil Gaiman does not reveal to us who Morpheus's girlfriend is in this volume, so don't worry thinking you missed something. It will just be this lingering question about who Morpheus's girlfriend was for now, and it will get revealed later. But Morpheus right now, because he got dumped, he is depressed and angsty, and he is making it rain in his dream realm so he can brood in the rain. Morpheus tells Lucian to erase the suite of rooms he had prepared for her, and to also tell all the palace staff to refrain from mentioning her name. So once again, another relationship does not work out for Morpheus. We see Mervyn Pumpkinhead. He is a character that was actually seen in past volumes, but he never had a speaking role. Well, we will finally get to hear him speak, and he is quite the funny character. He is kind of comic relief in the Sandman, and he makes fun of Morpheus's sour, sad demeanor. Mervyn Pumpkinhead is Morpheus's jaded, wisecracking, cigarette-smoking janitor, and he has a pumpkin for a head. His overall appearance is similar to that of a scarecrow combined with a jack-o'-lantern. Mervyn considers himself the voice of the people and the everyman, a working-class stiff. Mervyn is in charge of the construction, maintenance, and demolition work in the Dreaming, although he sometimes complains that his job is unnecessary since Morpheus can change any of it at will. Lucian tells Mervyn about Morpheus's order to get rid of all the rooms that were part of his girlfriend's suites. Mervyn is annoyed about this work. Mervyn also comments on Morpheus's wariness. He says that Morpheus enjoys being mopey. He spends a couple of months with a new broad, and then one day the magic's worn off and he goes back to work and she takes a hike. Whereas ordinary Joes like me, we shrug our shoulders and say, hey, that's life. Not him though, he's gotta be a tragic figure, standing out in the rain, mourning the loss of his beloved. So down comes the rain, and in the meantime, everybody gets dreams full of existential angst and wakes up feeling like hell, and we all get wet. Well, Morpheus, he is still brooding in the rain, and the entire Dreaming is storming. Abel's house is getting all flooded. Eventually, though, Delirium arrives at Morpheus's castle, and she goes to talk with him. Morpheus invites her in for some food. Now, Delirium, she will often say and do ridiculous stuff. This is just who she is. A servant of Morpheus named Taramis comes to take their order for food, and Delirium for her order says, have you got any little milk chocolate people about 3 inches high, men and women? I'd like some of them filled with raspberry cream and fresh mango juice. Morpheus orders an omelet and salad. When the food arrives, Delirium just takes her little chocolate people and she smushes them together like they are making love and kissing. And then she realizes that she doesn't even like mango juice. After dinner, the two of them talk. Delirium is worried that Morpheus doesn't like her, as he is usually so scary and horrible to her and seems like he's making fun of her. Morpheus apologizes to his sister. Delirium says that she wants to find their brother Destruction, and Desire and Despair turned her down already. Morpheus, using his gallery, talks to Desire, and asks if Desire is messing with him or Delirium, as Desire often does. Desire denies it though. While Morpheus was talking to Desire, we see a flashback to when Delirium was Delight many, many years ago, and she was in the process of changing, transforming from Delight into Delirium, and her brother Destruction helped her with that change. Back to Morpheus's dream realm in the present. Morpheus asks Delirium what she will do if he turns her down. She answers that she will ask Death to help her, and then Destiny, And if that fails, then she will look on her own, but she might get distracted and she does get lost kind of easily. They walk over to Lucian and Delirium laughs at his pointy ears. Morpheus, he announces that he is going to help Delirium look for their brother. Delirium is happy that Morpheus has agreed to help her. Morpheus tells Lucian to look after his realm while he is gone. Lucian takes Morpheus away for a quick aside, and he asks Morpheus if he really feels this is a wise action to take. Morpheus tells Lucian he does not think that they will actually find his brother, but he himself could use the distraction, a brief diversion to take his mind off of things like his girlfriend leaving. Secretly, Morpheus also wishes to see if he can perhaps find his girlfriend who dumped him out there in the real world and talk to her. Morpheus tells Lucian that he will return when either he or Delirium lose interest in this quest. Morpheus, he's not worried though. He says, after all, what could possibly go wrong? And we see in the dreaming, the clouds have cleared in Morpheus's dream realm, the sun is out and there is a rainbow. Issue 43. Delirium has a list of people that knew her brother Destruction and might know his whereabouts, so her and Morpheus will have to try and track them down in the waking world and see if they can help them. The people on the list are Bernie Capax, the lawyer, Etain of the Second Look, Lieb Olme, the alderman, and lastly, Ishtar, the dancing woman. We learn through some narration that there are people in the world that are known as the Old Ones, who live for a long time and don't die or age like us mortals. There are not many of them, but they do exist. And the people on this list that would know Destruction would fall into this category. One of the men on the list is Bernie Capax. He is the lawyer who knew Destruction. Bernie, for the most part, just seems like an ordinary, boring guy. We see him and he is riding the bus to work, and he walks down the street, and some bricks on a building that is being constructed collapse, and the bricks crush Bernie and kill him. And death comes to visit Bernie, and Bernie can't believe it, that after all these years, he died from some stupid accident. Talking to death, though, he comments, "I did okay though, didn't I? I mean, I got what, 15,000 years? That's pretty good, isn't it? I lived a pretty long time." Death replies, "You lived what anybody gets, Bernie. You got a lifetime. No more, no less. A lifetime." So with Bernie dead, it will make Morpheus and Delirium's hunt for their brother all the more difficult. Morpheus and Delirium are in the waking world and they are in Dublin. They are arranging for transportation around the world. They go to a travel agency to see an old acquaintance of Morpheus named Pharamond, who now goes by the name Mr. Feral. Morpheus wishes for him to arrange for transportation for him and Delirium, so they arrive at his office. But Mr. Feral's receptionist stops Morpheus. While Morpheus talks to the receptionist, Delirium is being silly and acting crazy all over the office. Morpheus, not realizing how the human world works, comically asks the receptionist, "Who rules here? To whom do you report? Who employs you? Who controls transportation?" The receptionist says that Mr. Feral doesn't see anyone without an appointment. But Morpheus tells the receptionist to phone Mr. Feral and explains that he wishes to speak with him. Morpheus says to tell him that we drank wine together in Babylon. Tell him. The receptionist phones Mr. Feral and he initially brushes it off and says he is busy. But when the receptionist mentions Babylon, Mr. Feral agrees to see Morpheus right away. The receptionist tells Morpheus that Mr. Feral is on his way down. Meanwhile, Delirium is making little colorful frogs that are bouncing around the office. Mr. Feral comes down and invites Morpheus and Delirium into a conference room. Mr. Feral, or Pharamond, is an old Babylonian god. At some point, Morpheus convinced Pharaoh to change himself along with the passing generations of mortals in order to avoid falling out of existence, like plenty of other old gods. Well, Mr. Pharaoh took the advice, and he chose to live on Earth in the guise of a mortal man under the name Mr. Pharaoh. And now he runs a travel agency in Dublin for both worldly and otherworldly travels. Mr. Pharaoh owes Morpheus a great deal, so he is happy to make any arrangements for him. We see another woman on the list of people that might know where destruction is. She is named Etain of the Second Look. We don't really know much about her in the story. Etain is the name of a Celtic god of summer who was beloved by the god of the underworld, so there might be some connection there. And the Second Look may be another name for second sight or precognition, which may be a hint at how she can sidestep danger. So this Etain is in her apartment, and she smells gas, but her second look ability is what seemed to help her react as fast as she did. She runs to her apartment window and jumps out of it and went down the fire escape to the street, and then her apartment exploded. She survived though, and she went to a nearby Kmart store to get some clothes, and then she went off into hiding. So now, 2 people on Delirium's list of people that knew her brother have had brushes with death. This is not a coincidence. Destruction had apparently set things in place that when people go looking for him, certain automatic functions would kick in and would attempt to impede anyone who might actually try to come after him. This is what led to the death of Bernie Capax the lawyer, and this is how Etain of the Second Look almost died. However, she did manage to barely escape with her life. We see Destruction. He is living on a peaceful island with a talking dog named Barnabas. Destruction is enjoying painting and talking with his dog, and he enjoys his quiet lifestyle. Destruction enters a room in his house, and it is a room that has the sigils of all his siblings on the wall, and in the middle of it is a scrying pool. The scrying pool was set to start bubbling loudly once it detects that someone is looking for him. It is an early warning system. With Morpheus and Delirium looking for him, the scrying pool is bubbling hard now. Morpheus and Delirium get on a plane, courtesy of Mr. Pharaoh, and they fly from Dublin to the US. On the plane, a little girl named Chloe Russell is talking to her mom, and she tells her mom that she had a scary dream where she got lost in the dream. The mom tells her daughter that she's silly, you can't get lost in a dream, you always wake up. The mother then leaves to go to the bathroom on the plane. Morpheus, overhearing the child, talks to this little Chloe and tells her, "Your mother is wrong. You can indeed become lost in dreams, and you may not always find yourself when you wake up." When the mother returns, she asks her daughter if that man said something to you, and Chloe says, "Yes, Mommy." The mother asks, "What did he say?" And Chloe responds, "True things." When Morpheus and Delirium land, Mr. Pharaoh has paid big money to make sure that Morpheus and Delirium can avoid having to go through customs. And they get ushered through back ways in the airport and eventually find themselves on the street. And there they meet a woman named Ruby DeLong. Ruby DeLong works for Mr. Pharaoh, and she will be their driver while they are here in America. Ruby has a classic car for them to drive around in. Mr. Pharaoh thought that Morpheus would appreciate it. And all of them together now drive off. And first on the list of people to visit is the lawyer, Bernie Capax. Issue 44. Another man on the list of people that know destruction is the older man, known as Lieb Olme. Well, somewhere in northern Scandinavia, the older man is in the woods and he senses trouble after watching the northern lights. He has all these traps around that sense death, and he finds that the trap in the south has been triggered. So the alderman performs this ritual where he transforms himself into a bear and he bites off his own shadow and sends his shadow to return home in his place, while he lives on as a bear. This way, whatever force destruction has sent to come for him will not be able to find him. Morpheus and Delirium and Ruby arrive at the home of Bernie Capax. They knock on the door, and Bernie's son opens it. Morpheus announces that he is looking for Bernie. Bernie's son tells Morpheus that his father died recently and the funeral is tomorrow. Bernie's son leads Morpheus into the basement of the house, and he shows them Bernie's office. The son was shocked. He always assumed his dad was this boring guy. Of course, we the reader know that Bernie was actually alive for 15,000 years. The son doesn't know that though. The son was shocked to find in his father's office a suitcase of gold coins, a bag of heroin and another of cocaine, guns and knives, a drawer filled with blank passports from all over the world, many birth certificates, credit cards, a Picasso painting in the bottom drawer. Well, with Bernie dead, Morpheus and Delirium aren't going to get much more info here, so they leave. Morpheus and Delirium return to Ruby and they drive on. Their next destination is to see Etain of the Second Look, who lives in Ohio. It is a 15-hour drive. Morpheus gets in an argument with their driver Ruby when she suggests that they stop for the night at a motel to rest. Morpheus doesn't understand why. They should just keep driving all night. Ruby says because we have to sleep and shower and whatnot. They argue some more, but eventually Morpheus agrees to staying in a motel. They arrive at the motel and each go into their separate rooms. Delirium found something to blow bubbles, so she spends most of the night doing that. Ruby retires to her room and smokes, and she thinks about her life, and then she dreams of one day being this rich and successful woman. Morpheus, he visits Lucian in the dream world. Morpheus is making sure everything is running smoothly. Morpheus tells Lucian that he thinks that something is trying to impede their efforts to find destruction, and he wants to know who and why. He tells Lucian that they will talk more later. As Morpheus leaves the dreaming and enters the motel room once again, he realizes that the motel is on fire. He walks out as firemen yell for him to get out of here. Morpheus joins Delirium at their car in the motel parking lot. Ruby, their driver, is apparently dead. She fell asleep with the cigarette in her mouth and the motel caught fire. Morpheus, he doesn't know this, but Ruby dying is yet again due to destruction, and whatever automatic functions and forces he put in place to impede anyone who might try to come after him. Morpheus and Delirium are a little saddened that their driver died, but Delirium then smiles. She says, "This means I get to drive." Issue 45. Another person on the list of people that destruction knows is a woman named Ishtar, otherwise known as the Dancing Woman. She was previously the Babylonian goddess of lust and sensuality, and now she has been reduced to being a common stripper. Ishtar goes to see her friend and fellow stripper, a woman named Tiffany. This morning, Tiffany is pretty sick, a little hungover, and she spent most of last night vomiting. Ishtar takes care of Tiffany and makes her breakfast. Meanwhile, Morpheus and Delirium are continuing their journey, now with Delirium driving. Delirium is a terrible driver, and she is swerving all over the road. Eventually, they get pulled over by a cop, and the cop tells Delirium that she is the worst driver he has ever seen. Delirium, feeling threatened, uses her powers of delirium and makes the police officer think that he has insects crawling all over his entire body. And she sentences this to this man for the rest of his life. So, for the rest of his life, this cop is gonna think insects are crawling all over him. Her and Morpheus then drive off. Morpheus asks her, was that really necessary? And Delirium answers, you've done worse? Which, when we think of Nada spending that much time she did in hell, it's probably true. Morpheus summons Matthew the Raven, who used to be a human in his past life. Morpheus wants Matthew to come with them on their journey, and he is to advise Delirium in how to drive properly. Tiffany recovers from her illness earlier, and her and Ishtar prepare to leave for work. Tiffany asks Ishtar why she never dances to her full potential when she is on stage. Ishtar answers that the audience only wants tits and ass, and the dancing comes second, so she never gives more than is necessary. Getting into their car, Tiffany complains that she has never found a nice guy to date, and all the guys turn out to be jerks in the end. Ishtar responds that she once found a nice guy, she's referring to Destruction in their previous relationship. She continues, but it was a long time ago, and she had to split up with him because of family fighting and his job. She wonders what he's doing now, though. Later on at the strip club, Tiffany and Ishtar go up on stage and they dance. Ishtar dances, but she holds back still. Morpheus, Delirium, and Matthew arrive to the strip club. They are here to talk with Ishtar, the dancing woman. The bouncer won't let them in though. Delirium is acting all weird, and they are not allowed to bring in Matthew, who is a frickin' bird. Morpheus, though, uses a kind of Jedi mind trick on the bouncer and tells him, "Excuse me, if you reflect for a moment, it will occur to you that we are 3 adult males, dressed and attired in conformity with the local standards, and you are only too pleased to invite us into your establishment." The bouncer sees them as 3 normal-looking bros, and he lets them in. When Morpheus enters the strip club, Ishtar recognizes him and she runs off stage in horror and attempts to hide. Morpheus eventually finds his way to her. Ishtar expresses great bitterness that he had pressured her to end her relationship with his brother Destruction all those many years ago. Morpheus explains that he has not come to bother her. He merely wants to know about Destruction's possible location. Ishtar admits that she does not know. She has not seen him for many centuries. Morpheus goes to leave, but before he does so, he warns her that some force is trying to stop them from finding Destruction by killing the people that they are visiting. Morpheus, Delirium, and Matthew leave the strip club for their next destination. Ishtar, she then walks out on stage, and for the first time in a long time, she decides to dance to her full potential. As she is dancing, the guys in the club are entranced, sweating, weeping, frozen. Blood is bursting from their ears. Tiffany, she starts getting freaked out and she runs and leaves the club. But Ishtar, she continues dancing up on that stage, and the power of her dance kills all of those inside the club, and eventually, the entire strip club building collapses around them. Luckily, Tiffany had already run outside to safety. There, Desire appears to her in its male form and offers Tiffany its coat. Desire mutters that Morpheus had been warned of the danger of this mission. Issue 46. In his place of hiding, Destruction attempts poetry to limited success. His dog, Barnabas, is criticizing his skills. Destruction comments that he doesn't dream anymore. He doesn't want to give himself away to his younger brother. This is perhaps why his poetry is not amazing. Destruction decides to go and continue with his painting. Morpheus talks to his sister and tells her that he is calling off the search for Destruction. Many of Destruction's known associates are now dead, and nothing good is coming from this journey of theirs. Delirium is very upset, but Morpheus doesn't care. He leaves Delirium and returns to his realm. Morpheus goes to his throne room and he talks to the travel agent, Mr. Farrell, and informs him that his search is over and he no longer needs his services. Morpheus does apologize for the death of his associate, Ruby DeLong, who most likely burned to death as a result of their search. Farrell responds pretty matter-of-factly, "Ruby's dead? That's the trouble with mortals, they do that. Not to worry, eh? Morpheus asks if Mr. Farrell regrets her death, and Farrell responds, "I try not to let myself get overly fond of them, it only leads to sorrow." Morpheus then creates a new sandy region within the dreaming, and there, within the dreaming, he travels to speak to Bast, the Egyptian cat goddess. We met her in Volume 4, Seasons of Mists. She promised information on Destruction's whereabouts in exchange for Morpheus giving her control over the domain of Hell, which he inherited from Lucifer in that volume. Well, at the time, Morpheus wasn't interested in that information, but now he's curious to hear her out. So Morpheus goes to talk with this Bast, and Morpheus even himself is transformed to look more cat-like when speaking with her. He asks her for Destruction's whereabouts, and while they are talking, Bast is attempting to seduce Morpheus. She's being pretty flirtatious and rolling around and cuddling next to him. Morpheus pushes her on providing info on his brother though, and Bast admits finally that she was lying before. She did not know Destruction's current location. She does share though that 60 years ago, Destruction was seen in Paris, but that is all. She tells Morpheus if he wishes to find Destruction, he will need to speak to an oracle. An oracle is a priest, priestess, or prophet acting as a medium through whom advice or prophecy was sought from the gods in classical antiquity. Morpheus, though, he rejects this suggestion. He does not believe an oracle could help him. Morpheus, he also rejects Bast's various sexual advances and leaves her, but on good terms. Morpheus returns to his castle in the dreaming and talks with Lucian, wondering if Lucian has any updates on who might be behind the deaths of the people him and his sister had run-ins while they were on Earth. Lucian has no info. Morpheus notices in his gallery the window into Delirium's world has been blacked out. This is troubling. Morpheus calls on his elder sister Death to provide him some guidance. Death arrives and she is angry with Morpheus, knowing that he is likely responsible for whatever upset Delirium so much as to close herself off from the rest of the family. Eventually, Morpheus agrees to go to Delirium's realm and set things right with her. Morpheus, he arrives in Delirium's realm. It is a chaotic, avant-garde, constantly changing mass of colors and strange objects and shapes. Morpheus apologizes to Delirium, explaining that he had selfishly agreed to join her search because he had secretly hoped he would encounter the woman who had dumped him recently. But once things had become dangerous and people started dying, he decided to call off the search. However, now he understands that they must continue their search and see this through to the end. Delirium presses Morpheus to admit that he is fond of her and asks him if he likes her, and Morpheus answers, "Yes, I suppose I must. I do, Delirium. You entertain me, and it distresses me to see you troubled." With that, Delirium, happy now, agrees to return to the search with Morpheus. Issue 47. Issue 47 is when Sandman transitioned away from being published as part of the DC Universe line of books and moved over to the newly launched Vertigo imprint of DC Comics, which was launched in 1993. The Vertigo imprint's purpose was for DC to publish comics with adult content such as nudity, drug use, profanity, and graphic violence that did not fit the restrictions of DC's main line, thus allowing more creative freedom. Sandman was one of the flagship books of the imprint. Some of the biggest books to come out of the Vertigo imprint since then were Preacher, Why the Last Man, Fables, 100 Bullets, and many, many more. The Vertigo imprint of DC has published some of the best comics of all time. So I just wanted to point out to the historical significance of this issue. Destruction is with his dog, Barnabas, and he is cooking some food. Barnabas has little faith in Destruction's cooking ability, especially if his cooking skills are anything like his art skills. We see outside Destruction's lackluster sculpture that he was trying to make. Morpheus and Delirium continue their journey to find Destruction, but they are out of leads, so they decide to finally seek the help of their brother Destiny. They travel to his realm, to his garden, to see him. Naturally, as Destiny knows all, he has been expecting them and he knows why they have come. Morpheus asks if Destiny will tell him where Destruction is. Destiny's advice is to give up their search, but he knows Morpheus will not. Very cryptically, Destiny suggests that the pursuit of Destruction will have negative side effects for Morpheus, but he cannot or will not elaborate on that further. Morpheus asks, "Is there anything you can tell me?" Destiny replies, "Nothing you would want to hear." He then tells Morpheus, "She does not love you, and truly she never did. She will not change her mind, no matter how long nor how deeply you wish that were the case. You will see her but one more time, long after this is over, and the outcome of that meeting will not be satisfactory for either of you." Morpheus replies, "I did not wish to be told that." Morpheus, he wanted to know about Destruction, not how sad his love life will be. Destiny answers, "You asked me to tell you what you needed to know, not what you wished to hear." Morpheus asks, "So you will not tell me where our brother is to be found?" And Destiny replies, "I may tell you only what others have told you. You need an oracle." And Morpheus says, "There are no oracles who can tell of our family." And Destiny replies, "You thought of one when you spoke to the cat goddess, did you not? There is, after all, an oracle who is of the family." Destiny is referring to Orpheus, who is, apparently, an oracle as well. Morpheus replies, "No." Morpheus, he is saddened. He knows his brother Destiny is correct. Orpheus is an oracle, and Orpheus will know. But Morpheus greatly does not want to see his son again, especially after the way they ended things on such poor terms last time he saw him, when Morpheus refused to end his son's life, and he told his son that he would never see him again. Delirium, who was wandering around, joins their conversation finally. She notices that Morpheus is sad. She asks Destiny, "What did you tell him?" And Destiny answers, "Surely that is his affair and not yours." Delirium very astutely says to Destiny, "Do you know why I stopped being Delight, my brother? I do. There are things not in your book. There are paths outside this garden. You would do well to remember that." Morpheus and Delirium leave Destiny's realm, and eventually they arrive on the island where Orpheus's shrine is guarded by Andros and his family. After some convincing, Morpheus has this Andros agree to let him go and talk to his son. So Morpheus goes into the shrine and talks with Orpheus. Meanwhile, the Delirium is playing by Johanna Constantine's grave. Morpheus, he then returns, and he says that he has the information that they need, but it cost him a great deal. He owes his son Orpheus a boon now in return. Andros' son Chris rows Morpheus and Delirium to a neighboring island, where it turns out Destruction has been staying at for some time. They arrive on the island, and finally, Destruction greets his siblings and welcomes them into his home for some dinner and talk. We see the feast that he was preparing for them earlier is all laid out on the table. Issue 48. Morpheus, Delirium, and Destruction have dinner. Morpheus and Delirium seem to have little interest in the meal Destruction has made for them. Delirium explains the details of their long journey to find Destruction, albeit with random tangents. She says, "So I went to see Dream, and I thought he'd say no, but he gave me little chocolate lovers, and he said, okay, and we saw this traveling man, and I made little frogs, and this lady wanted my name, and I went on an airplane. I like airplanes. I like anywhere that isn't a proper place. I like in-betweens." And then she goes on and on and on. Eventually, the topic of conversation turns to the rest of the Endless family. Morpheus explains they are all fine and pretty much doing the same thing as before. Destruction asks why they came looking for him. Delirium, she says that she hopes that Destruction will come back and rejoin the family and everything will be all right again. Morpheus then explains why he came to seek Destruction. He explains he initially came because Delirium desired him to, and he also had an ulterior motive in finding his ex-girlfriend. But later, when Ruby died as a result of their search, it became more of a matter of honor to finish their quest, so she did not just die in vain. Destruction comments that Morpheus's feelings about this Ruby suggests that he has changed significantly over the past 300 years since he last saw him. He is more caring now. Destruction gives the food to Barnabas that Morpheus and Delirium don't seem to want to eat. Eventually, Destruction admits that Ruby's death, as well as the deaths of the others, was likely the result of safety mechanisms he set up against being found when he abandoned his realm. Morpheus asks about Destruction's realm and why he left. Destruction explains that he left because the Endless are not the agents of the domains over which they preside. Destruction occurs with or without him, and it certainly has continued on without his influence in the 300 years since he's been gone. People and things are still created, still exist, and are still destroyed. They tear down and they build. Things still change. The only difference is that no one's running it anymore. It's nothing to do with me any longer. It's theirs. They can make their own destruction. It's not my responsibility and it's not my fault. Delirium asks if Destruction has been here the whole time on this island. Destruction explains no, that he has been many places. He says, I helped build a cathedral in New York. I fought for pay in Africa. I worked as a pavement artist in London and as a street artist in Paris. I spent an enjoyable month forging cave paintings for a Spanish town that needed tourists, and a dull decade helping dig the Panama Canal. Morpheus asks how he knew that they were coming for him. Destruction explains all about the scrying pool out back that warns him when others are looking for him. Destruction asks how Morpheus found him in the end, and Morpheus answers, I spoke to my son. Destruction comments that he always liked Orpheus. Morpheus asks for clarification on how Destruction could leave, and Destruction answers because there's no such thing as a one-sided coin. There are two sides. Destruction did not cease with the abandonment of my realm, no more than people would cease to dream should Morpheus abandon his realm. He explains that perhaps Destruction is more uncontrolled with him gone, wilder, perhaps not, but it's no longer anyone's responsibility. They all go for a walk outside to look at the stars in the sky. Destruction explains that the Endless are merely patterns, ideas, wave functions, repeating motifs. He says that they have no right to play with their lives, to order their dreams and desires. He then explains his theory on the duality to each of the Endless. Without destruction, there can be no creation. Without despair, there can be no hope. Without desire, no hatred. Without destiny, no freedom. Without a dream, perhaps there can be no reality. As they look at the stars, Destruction is saddened. He liked it here, he was comfortable, and now he will have to leave again. But he tells Morpheus and Delirium he is at least happy that they got to spend some time together. They head inside the house. Destruction gives Morpheus some advice. He says, remember what I did. Remember that I left. Remember how hard it was for me to leave, and that it was not your fault. Morpheus is confused. He says, this is your advice? And Destruction answers, it is. Remember it. And Morpheus replies, I am not in the habit of forgetting things. But Destruction says, and I thought this was a pretty brilliant line for all of us. He says, my brother, you forget nothing you have interest in. You forget instantly the things you do not care to know. Before leaving, Destruction gives his canine companion Barnabas to Delirium as a gift, as some sort of consolation for the fact that he himself will not be rejoining them. For where Destruction is going, Barnabas could not follow. Destruction then wraps up his sigil, which is a sword, in his handkerchief, along with his scrying pool. He bids Morpheus and Delirium farewell, and then he walks off into the stars. Well, with Destruction gone and this visit now over, Morpheus now prepares to face his son one more time. He has a debt to repay him. He must kill him. Issue 49, the final issue in this volume. Morpheus goes to see his son Orpheus in the shrine. One thing to note is that Morpheus does not apologize. Orpheus tells his father, "I did not think that you would be the one to kill me. Do you remember what you said to me then, father? Your life is your own, your death likewise, always and forever your own. Farewell. We shall not meet again." Morpheus says to his son, "I believe I said something like that, yes." Orpheus continues, "Those were your exact words. I have had plenty of time to think on them. I should have died long ago." Morpheus says, "Perhaps." Orpheus ends by saying to his father, "I wish things had been otherwise. I am ready." Morpheus picks up Orpheus, kisses his head, and then he kills him. Morpheus's hand is then covered with blood. He closes Orpheus's eyes and then takes a moment for himself to collect. Morpheus heads outside of the shrine, his bloody hand dripping into the grass as he walks. And as the blood hits the grass, it sprouts new blood-red flowers where it lands. Morpheus joins his younger sister Delirium outside, and there they are also joined by Despair. Despair asks about Destruction, and she is pleased to learn that he spoke fondly of her. She tells Delirium that she regrets not joining them on their journey to see Destruction. She says she would have liked to see him one last time. Delirium, she disappears back to her realm with her new dog Barnabas. Despair picks up one of those newly sprouted blood-red flowers and journeys back to her own realm as well. In Despair's realm, Desire is waiting for her, and the two of them talk. Desire comments how it swore an oath once to make Morpheus spill family blood, and now that he has, Desire feels like it should be triumphant. This is what Desire wanted after all, but instead Desire comments how it is now scared. Despair says she is scared as well. Now what Despair and Desire are referring to here in this conversation is when Desire attempted to trick Morpheus into spilling family blood in Volume 2, The Doll's House. In Volume 2, remember, Morpheus almost killed Rose Walker because Rose Walker was a dream vortex. But Rose Walker was also secretly the daughter of Desire. Desire in its male form raped Unity Kincaid while she was sleeping from the sleeping sickness. And in that volume, we also learned that it is against the rules of the Endless for one of them to kill another family member and spill their blood. So if Morpheus killed Rose Walker, he might have had to face some sort of dire consequences. But luckily he didn't go through with it because Unity Kincaid stopped him at the last minute. Well, right now, Morpheus has killed his son, Orpheus. Now even though Orpheus requested it, Morpheus has still spilled family blood, and now he might have to face dire consequences in the future. In the dreaming, Morpheus tells Andros that his last task as guardian of Orpheus is to bury his head. Morpheus then returns to his castle. He notices that Nuala is wearing a pendant that belonged to Morpheus's ex-girlfriend. Previously, Morpheus forbid anything in his castle that reminded him of her, but now he allows Nuala to keep it. He feels as if he is maybe closer to getting over her. Morpheus tells Lucian to reward all those who helped him on his journey. Mr. Pharaoh, the travel agent, Lady Bast, the Egyptian cat goddess, and the dead human Ruby. Morpheus then retreats to the privacy of his personal quarters. He finally washes the blood from his hands, and in the basin, he sees an image of his son Orpheus. He tells Orpheus that he should have gone to his lover's funeral to say goodbye to Eurydice, and then he should have continued living his life. Morpheus, he then sits down and laments. On the island, we see Andros and his son Chris burying the head of Orpheus. And that is the end of Volume 7. Alright, so that was Volume 7, and what a fantastic volume. Marvin Pumpkinhead was hilarious with him goofing on Morpheus and how gloomy he is all the time. Morpheus and Delirium's road trip was very funny and exciting and interesting and suspenseful. Will they find destruction? There's that mystery of what is killing all of these various people out there. And then when they finally meet Destruction, Morpheus has a very fascinating conversation with him where they discuss and debate if the Endless should exist and why Destruction left his realm, and we learn more about the various ways the Endless works. So that was all good stuff. And of course, Destruction, he's going to go into hiding once again, but he says goodbye to his siblings. That was great. Even hearing from Desire and Despair and Destiny was really good stuff as well. And Morpheus being forced to confront his son and kill his son was a very good moment as well. So this was just an all-out great volume. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back in the future with Volume 8.